Pool D in the 2019 Rugby World Cup. Before I get started, I need to say a quick thank you to Mark and his sister Paloma for sending through this Uruguay rugby jersey. I had a tough time trying to source a Uruguay rugby jersey. I have no idea what strings or methods Mark used to get his hands on one of these, but they are pretty tough to get. I understand there was some kind of Spanish-speaking skills involved in there, but the closest I could get was a 2015 one that was 3XL that I was absolutely swimming in. So, man, cheers to Mark for somehow getting his hand on this. They are tough to get. At least I failed, but Mark succeeded. So, very much appreciated, Mark. And, what else can I say? You're a champion. So, Pool D, which includes these guys, Uruguay, along with Georgia, Fiji, Wales, and Australia. It's not quite a pool of death as in like Pool C, but there's a lot of believers in Fiji for this pool, and they play Australia early, so that's going to be an interesting one to watch. Uruguay, I don't think are given a whole bunch of chances to get any wins, but perhaps to give the Georgians a run is going to be their focus. Georgia again will probably like to be putting their case forward for more attention at the outside of Rugby World Cup time. That's kind of how the Argentinians seem to get their foot more through the door with World Rugby, was through Rugby World Cup performances. So this is a chance for the Georgians to shine. But yeah, Australia and Wales are definitely the two favourites, with Fiji seen as that possible outsider. I'll go over the rest and the travel as well. But in terms of this pool, it's the third favourite pool to produce a winner for the Rugby World Cup. So Pool B is the favourite. Pool C is the second favourite. This one's third, with Pool A coming in last. So that's just according to the bookies. They're saying if this pool is to produce a finalist, the most likely final, according to the bookies again, is Wales to take on the All Blacks in the final. So I certainly wouldn't mind seeing that game, but the Aussies might have something to say about who goes through top. First game opens up. It is Australia-Fiji. This is the second game of the Rugby World Cup, so it's going to be a massive one. Again, color-coded the fixtures, which are here on the board. 3 or 4 days rest between games is red, 5 or 6 is blue, and 7 or more is in green here. So all the opening games are in green, as I've mentioned in the other 3 pool previews. But yeah, that first game for Australia to take on Fiji is a massive, massive game, because if the Fijians can somehow get an upset over the Australians, which they haven't done for a very long time, I think it's been more than 50 years, then man, do Australia need to get a result over Wales, because otherwise that'll be them done for the tournament. So that's a massive one. Wales against Georgia as the other opening game of the pool. I seem to remember the Georgians pushed Wales a few years ago, but I think this is one that the Welsh will be looking to get a comfortable win. I think they would like to think they could do that. But that being said, they will still have one eye on that next game, which you can see is against Australia in fewer than 7 days following that game against Georgia. The next one is Fiji against Uruguay. So Fiji have a pretty quick turnaround for that game against Uruguay. They only have 3 days rest. For Uruguay, it's their opening game, so if the Fijians play a B team, it'll be a good chance for the Uruguayan guys to get a good run, if nothing more than that. But we'll see. I haven't seen a lot of Uruguayan rugby, so I'm hoping that they can, impress a bit more than any of the people giving them credit for. The one after that is Georgia against Uruguay. So Uruguay this time with the quick turnaround, 3 days rest. Georgia on 5. It's a pity that a couple of the other pools have got one game at the end of the pool, which in all likelihood will be the 2 teams on no wins. It's a pity that game kind of comes early for this pool, but I guess that is just the way the schedule is going to go. Australia against Wales, again, is a massive game, and the Aussies do have the advantage of having 7 days rest between that game against Fiji. So the Aussies' 2 probably biggest games they get as their opener, then they get a full rest, and then they get the second crack. So they can essentially play the same squad twice if they want, and if they get at least 1 win out of 2, they should be sitting pretty kind of going into those final 2 games of the pool. But yeah, it's just the schedule has fallen that way nicely for them, whereas Wales for that Aussie game only have the 5-day turnaround. So Wales will have some selection questions, I guess, with that first game to how strong do they line up against Georgia. Next one is Georgia-Fiji. Tough for Georgia in that they only have a 3-day turnaround for that one. Fiji are on a full 7. So I suppose for Georgia, again, if they're doing a bit of squad rotation, this might be a game that they're targeting to put in a good performance. Like I said, the Georgians would dearly love to get more faith put in them by World Rugby in terms of giving them more opportunities. There's always that talk about them going for the Six Nations, but it's never going to happen, at least while the financial situations remain the way they are. But if there's one thing that can change that, it is constant performances against top-class teams when you finally get that exposure on the world stage, which unfortunately is often just at Rugby World Cups. Australia against Uruguay, both teams on 5 days rest for that one. That one will probably be pretty one-sided, but again, expects a few squad changes. Wales, Fiji on 5 days rest. Wales on 9 days rest. So Wales get a big break after that Aussie game to rest and recuperate for Fiji. So if there's one thing that's kind of unfortunate about Fiji's schedule for this Rugby World Cup is the 2 teams that they really need to get at least one win over both get like a full prep cycle beforehand. So it's kind of even Stevens for the Fijians against the Aussies, but the Fijians don't get that kind of leg up that some of the other teams who are looking to push into that top 2 do. But for Wales, whether or not 9 days is too long, and you start to lose a bit of that match sharpness. I mean, you could kind of argue that both ways, but ultimately, I think if you were going to choose 5 days rest or 9, you'd take 9. Australia, Georgia, second to last game of the pool. Georgia on a full 7 days. Australia with those kind of 2 quick turnarounds, but we're looking to be put in a performance there and not drop anything, and especially if there's bonus points that are required in terms of progression. And lastly, Wales against Uruguay. Wales with the quick turnaround, so expect a full squad rotation from them in that last game. Uruguay will have had a full 7 days. Again, all these rest days and the travel I'm about to mention from Twitter, Russ Petty. Check his workout if you are keen to have a look for some more. So yeah, that is the schedule. It's kind of a fairly even one for this pool, but you notice that Australia don't get any of the really quick turnaround, so I feel like their schedule is actually pretty nice compared to some of the other teams who are under a bit of pressure. As I said, Fiji probably would have liked a kind of hand to be dealt to them, but ultimately you can't rely on the schedule to get you through. You've just got to get a win one way or the other. In terms of travel, the Aussies get the short end of the stick for this one. 2,888 kilometers, I believe, is the second most of any other team in the World Cup this year. So there's a lot of travel for the Aussie guys to do. I mean, if you compare that to Japan, who are at the least, it's 635 kilometers. So almost 3,000 is a bit of a distance. But that being said, in the scheme of things, it's not halfway around the world. It's not Super Rugby traveling from South Africa to New Zealand in a week, or Australia. So I would imagine that for the Aussie guys won't be too much of a problem. Fiji also above 2,000 kilometers with 2,275. Uruguay 1,600, Wales 1,400, and Georgia actually get the best end of the deal in terms of having to make the least travel. But this pool overall is the second worst for travel. So pools A and B have less travel than these guys. It's only Pool C which has more. And in terms of rest days, it's actually Wales and Australia that get the best totals with 17 rest days. It's just the spacing which is a bit different. Like I mentioned, Wales have got that 9 days, which perhaps eats into some of the other time. They potentially could have liked that to be a bit more evenly spread. The other 3 teams all on 15 days, so towards the lower end, but not the lowest by any means of the Rugby World Cup this year. So yeah, that's the final pool. Pool D in the Rugby World Cup. It's tomorrow. As I record this video, the World Cup starts tomorrow. Yeah, my annual leave starts Monday. Absolutely pumped. Thanks again, Mark, for the Uruguay jersey. I don't know how you did it, but you're a legend for getting that done. You guys let me know your thoughts on Pool D. Can you see Fiji managing to get through, or are you going with the kind of safe picks in Wales and Australia? Which one do you think will get on top? If you're wondering why I've got Australia on top of this list, it's because that's the World Cup seedings rather than the current rankings. So that's just the kind of way that goes. Let's hope for good performances from Georgia and Uruguay as well. As I said, it's their kind of chance to shine in front of the world while we are watching. But yeah, you guys let me know your thoughts on this one, and I'll talk to you again soon. See you later.